Finding a franchise quarterback is the Giants' number one offseason priority. There's no disagreements with that. But upgrading at cornerback should be considered number 1A. So let's bring in our NFL reporter for the Post, Ryan Dunleavy, because the medical evaluations of the top corners in this class just might push Joe Schoen to grab a lockdown guy in free agency. Ryan, his article is up on the NewYorkPost.com/sports. Make sure you guys go read that after here. Ryan, what's going on, man? They need a quarterback and cornerback. There's a lot to go into free agency, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. So next week's the NFL Combine, and the players will make headlines when they're talking, and the GMs and coaches will make headlines when they're talking. But for the Giants, I think one of the most important things is the medicals, because Joe Schoen, when he was building this team last year, Brandon, the number one thing he stressed in his draft and free agency moves was clean injury histories and track record of game day availability. And when you look at, assuming the Giants aren't going to pick Travis Hunter third overall, which they could, but if they're going to target a corner later, like with their second pick, because I think it's their second biggest need, guys like Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame missed 10 games after undergoing hip surgery. East Carolina's Siobhan Revelle missed 10 games after tearing his ACL. Kentucky's Maxwell Hairston missed 5 games with a shoulder injury. Michigan's Will Johnson missed 7 games with turf toe, and I think Johnson will be gone before them. But those other three guys would all be there in that 34 or slightly higher on a trade up range. So the Giants are going to need to find out how those medicals turn back at the combine next week, so that they know if that's a realistic option for them to get a starting corner there, or if they're going to need to address number one corner in free agency a couple weeks before the draft even happens.
Okay, so the medical red flags may shy Joe Schoen away from drafting one of these guys with the premium pick. But before we even get into talking about the free agent targets, Ryan, the Giants don't spend that much money when it comes to corners compared to the rest of the league. But do you think that has to change this offseason?
I do. I mean, they ranked second in the second to last in the league in interceptions last year. They went with a really young group, which is interesting because, as we know from the Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney moves, the Giants really stress positional value, and one of the top four positional values, anybody who believes in that would tell you safety and running back aren't big positional value, aren't high on that list, but corner is. It's like quarterback, defensive line, offensive line, receiver, and corner are the top five by far position values. And the Giants spend something like 9.3 million last year, which was second to last in the league. They only slightly climbed to 11 million. They have a lot of young guys. It's Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips, Deonte Banks. They're all on their rookie contracts. I think those guys need a guy who's been there, done that before as their number one corner to slide Deonte Banks. So I think you could be seeing a spending spree, maybe the Giants' largest free agent investment going to corner.
A spending spree and some heavy competition, because when you talk about Tay Banks and Cordell Flott, Tay Banks' PFF grade was a 50.9. That's 183rd out of 223 corners. And Cordell Flott, 62.2. That's 107th out of 223 corners. So there definitely needs to be an upgrade, someone to be brought in to be a sure thing, and then let everyone else kind of compete. And, competition makes guys better. So when we talk about going through free agency and bringing in a CB1, a lockdown guy, who are some of the top corners in free agency, and what are their projected costs?
Well, I'll give you five guys that are all 28 or younger, and the Pro Football Focus all projected 3-year contracts that pay between 14 million a year and 17 million dollar a year. The Jets, DJ Reed, obviously familiar with this market, having just played with the Jets, and the Giants' new secondary coach is former Jets safeties coach Marquand Manuel. So Reed and Manuel obviously have a relationship. Wouldn't surprise me if Manuel has Reed atop his list. Charvarius Ward from the 49ers, a guy who's been a Pro Bowler and won. He was with the Chiefs before the 49ers. The Lions, Carlton Davis, he was with the Bucks before them. The Vikings, Byron Murphy Jr., and then the guy who intrigues me is the Chargers, Asante Samuel Jr. The Giants fans will know that name because Asante Samuel famously dropped great player in the NFL, famously dropped the interception right before the helmet catch in 2007. So he let the helmet catch happen. It'd be interesting if his son is now on the Giants, and he probably interests me the most because he's the youngest of the guys I mentioned. It'd be his second contract versus all those guys' third contract. He's only 25 years old, so you would think he's ascending rather than having already peaked. And then there's another guy I didn't mention in the article, but Paulson Adebo from the Saints. He might be a little cheaper than those guys, and again, he's coming off an injury, which Joe Shane doesn't love. But he's a young guy who could be ascending as well, as long as his medicals check out.
Yeah, when we talk about DJ Reed, the last 3 years, Pro Football Focus gave him grades of 72.5, 77.9, and 70.7. To go back to Cordell Flott and Tay Banks, that's 50.9 and 62.2. You see just how much of an upgrade that is. And we talk about a team that sixth in the league in sacks last season. So when you have that, and you have that pass rush with the Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, a healthy Dexter Lawrence, you need guys on the back end that can hold up and to turn the ball over. I think that's one thing that the Giants were kind of missing and lacking last season. And like you said, go ahead.
One thing I think that's key, Brandon, is I think the Giants need to take some of their starters and make them backups. And that's just not at corner. Like Cordell Flott got exposed as a corner. As a starting corner. He's a pretty decent third outside corner. And that could go, I think, at a lot of different places. Like Josh Azudu might be an okay backup guard. He's not a starting guard. So, like, I think that's what they need to do. They need to find better starters and turn some of their young starters into high quality backups.
Depth and competition. Ryan Dunleavy, thanks for hopping on with us, my man.
Thanks, Brandon.